Kind maid takes care of a sick janitor, unaware he is the billionaire CEO. Before we begin this story, tell me where you're watching from and rate this story from 0 to 10 in the comments. Enjoy the story. The digital clock on the break room wall blinked 2:14 a.m., a relentless red eye in the silent darkness of the Blackwood building. To the rest of the world, New York City was sleeping, or at least pretending to sleep beneath the freezing November rain that lashed against the tempered glass windows. But for Elena, the night was only halfway through. The chemical tang of lemon disinfectant and floor wax had been the perfume of her life for 3 years. Her arms ached, a dull, familiar throb in her triceps from scrubbing the coffee stains and red wine spills that executives left behind in the conference rooms on the 40th floor. They lived in a world of financial projections and power lunches. Elena lived in the world of the messes they forgot to clean up. She dipped the mop into the yellow-wheeled bucket, the gray water swirling like a miniature stormy ocean. "Just 2 more floors, Elena," she whispered to herself, her voice echoing slightly in the empty, marble-lined corridor. "Just 2 more floors, and you can go home, heat up the soup, and sleep for 4 hours before the shift at the diner." She needed this money. Her mother's treatment wasn't covered by the state's basic insurance, and every overtime hour in this tower of glass and steel meant 1 more bottle of medication, 1 more week of relief. The fear of losing this job was a constant chill in her stomach, colder than the central air conditioning that never seemed to turn off. Elena pushed the cleaning cart toward the service elevator. The destination was the 42nd floor, the executive suite, the sanctuary of Adrian Blackwood, the reclusive and legendary CEO Elena had never seen in person, but whose demands terrified the entire cleaning staff. Nothing out of place, her supervisor always barked. If he finds a speck of dust, we're all out on the street. The elevator doors slid open on the 42nd floor. It was dark, illuminated only by the faint glow of emergency strip lighting and the city grid outside, filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows. The silence up here was different. It was heavy. It smelled of old money, expensive leather, and stress. Elena began her routine, moving like an efficient ghost. She was mopping the corridor near the main boardroom when she heard it. A sound. It wasn't the hum of the HVAC system or the creak of the building settling in the wind. It was a human sound, a muffled groan, followed by the thud of something heavy hitting a hollow wall. Elena froze, gripping the mop handle like a weapon. Security protocol stated she should call the guards immediately. No one was supposed to be here at this hour, but curiosity, or perhaps a misplaced instinct for self-preservation, made her hesitate. If she called security and it was just a rat or a drafty window, they would be annoyed, and annoyed people fired janitors. She followed the sound. It was coming from a discreet door at the end of the hallway, almost invisible against the dark walnut paneling, the auxiliary supply closet. Elena approached, her heart hammering against the seams of her synthetic blue uniform. She turned the handle slowly. It was unlocked. The light from the hallway spilled into the small space, revealing metal shelves stacked with premium bond paper and ink cartridges. And there, on the floor, curled up between a box of toners and the wall, was a man. He didn't look like an executive. He was soaked to the bone, as if he had walked through the rain for hours before collapsing there. He wore simple dark slacks and a gray t-shirt that was plastered to his chest with sweat. He was shivering violently, his teeth chattering with a rhythmic, frightening sound. Elena dropped the mop. It hit the floor with a wet slap, and rushed to him. "Hey," she called out, dropping to her knees beside him. "Sir, are you okay?" The man lifted his head. Elena lost her breath for a second. Even in the dim light, even with his face pale and slick with feverish sweat, he was striking. He had strong features, a tense jawline, and dark eyes that seemed to struggle to focus on her. But there was pain in those eyes. A lot of pain. "No," he groaned, his voice raspy and slurred. "Don't call anyone." He tried to push himself up, but his arms gave out, and he slumped back against the boxes of paper. Elena touched his forehead. He was burning up, a fever so high it radiated heat right through his damp skin. "You're burning up," Elena said, her caregiver instinct overriding her fear. She glanced at his clothes. Simple, no apparent labels, no gold watch, no Italian leather shoes. Probably a worker from the night maintenance crew. Or maybe a delivery guy who got stuck in the building during the storm. Do you work in maintenance? The man blinked, confused, fighting through the fog of his fever. He looked at her uniform, then down at his own wretched state. Yes, he lied. Or perhaps he just agreed so she would stop asking questions. Maintenance. I knew they pushed the night crew too hard, Elena muttered, indignant. She immediately began peeling off the frayed wool cardigan she wore over her uniform and draped it over his shoulders. My name is Elena. What's yours? The man hesitated. The name Adrian Blackwood was stamped on the building's facade, on the business magazines in the lobby, and on the paychecks of thousands of people. Saying that name now would bring ambulances, paparazzi, the board of directors, and lawyers. He just wanted peace. He just wanted the world to stop spinning for a minute. He had fled his own charity gala downstairs, climbed the emergency stairs to avoid the press, and collapsed here, exhausted from a flu he had ignored for days and a life he had hated for years. Alex, he whispered. It was his middle name, a name no one used. Okay, Alex, you can't stay on this cold floor. Elena looked around. The closet was cramped but warmer than the hallway. I have some soup in my bag, and some aspirin. We need to break that fever. Adrian, now Alex, tried to protest. He hadn't eaten homemade food in years. He didn't receive help without a contract signed or a hidden agenda attached, but his body betrayed him. The darkness at the edges of his vision was growing. Why? He managed to ask, his voice cracking. Why are you helping? I'm just nobody. Elena paused, already pulling an old dented thermos from her bag. She looked at him with a sincerity Adrian hadn't seen since childhood. Because nobody should be sick and alone in the dark, Alex. Not even in a glass palace like this. She smiled, a tired but genuine smile that made something strange happen in Adrian's chest. Something that had nothing to do with the flu. Now, drink this. It's chicken noodle, my mom's recipe. It's not fancy restaurant food, but it cures everything. While the storm raged outside atop the corporate world, the poorest woman in the building was feeding the richest man in the city with a plastic spoon, completely unaware that she was holding the fate of an empire in her calloused hands. The plastic spoon scraped against the bottom of the styrofoam cup, a harsh sound in the hushed intimacy of the supply closet. To Adrian, the chicken noodle soup tasted of salt, dried herbs, and something else entirely, something archaic and forgotten. It tasted like safety. He swallowed with difficulty, his throat raw and swollen, but the warmth spreading through his chest was immediate. For the last decade, Adrian's meals had been orchestrated events, business lunches at per se, gala dinners with rubbery chicken breasts disguised under truffle oil, or protein shakes consumed in the back of a moving limousine while reading market reports. Food was fuel, or it was politics. It had never been just care. Slow down, Elena murmured, her voice a soft command. She was sitting cross-legged on the linoleum floor, oblivious to the fact that her uniform trousers were absorbing the chill. Her focus was entirely on him. If you eat too fast, you'll get sick again. My mom always says the stomach is the second heart. You have to treat it gently. Adrian looked at her through the haze of his fever. In the dim light, the shadows cut across her face, highlighting the exhaustion etched around her eyes and the gentle curve of her mouth. She wasn't beautiful in the way the women in his social circle were beautiful. Polished, injected, and terrifyingly perfect. She was real. She was a landscape of hard work and resilience. Your mom, Adrian rasped, pushing the words past the sandpaper in his throat. She sounds smart. Elena let out a short, dry laugh, dipping the spoon back into the thermos. She's stubborn. That's what she is. She thinks ginger ale cures cancer and that Vicks Vapo Rub is a gift from God. Her smile faded slightly, replaced by a shadow of worry that she couldn't quite hide. But she's fighting. That's all that matters. Adrian watched her hand as she offered him another spoonful. Her fingers were red, the skin around the nails dry and cracked from harsh chemicals and endless scrubbing. No manicure, no diamond rings, just hands that worked. He felt a sudden, inexplicable surge of shame. He owned the company that manufactured the cleaning agents she used. He approved the budget cuts that likely limited the supply of protective gloves. He was the architect of the cracked skin on her hands. You mentioned, Adrian paused to cough, a deep rattling sound that made his ribs ache. You mentioned the night crew is pushed too hard. Elena sighed, shifting her weight. She pulled a napkin from her pocket and dabbed at a drop of soup on his chin. The touch was electric, even through his delirium. "It's this place," she whispered, glancing at the closed door as if the building itself. "We're listening. Mr. Blackwood, the CEO. The supervisors say he's obsessed with perfection. The Blackwood Standard, they call it. We have 15 minutes per conference room. 15 minutes to erase every trace of human existence. If we miss a spot, we get written up. 3 write-ups, and you're out." Adrian closed his eyes. The Blackwood Standard. He remembered writing that memo. He had dictated it 3 years ago, sitting in his leather chair, looking at a spreadsheet that showed a 4% dip in operational efficiency. To him, it was math. To the woman feeding him soup, it was fear. "He sounds like a monster," Adrian muttered. "I don't think he's a monster," Elena said thoughtfully, capping the thermos. "I think he's just lonely. People who are loved don't need everything to be perfect. They accept the mess. Only people who are empty inside need their reflections to shine on every surface." The words hit Adrian like a physical blow. He opened his eyes, staring at her. How could she see him so clearly without even knowing who he was? He was stripped bare, not by a corporate audit, but by a janitor with a thermos of soup. "You're a philosopher, Elena," he whispered. "I'm a cleaner, Alex." She corrected him gently. She reached out and placed the back of her hand against his cheek again. Her skin was cool, rough, and incredibly soothing. "Your fever is breaking a little. You're sweating it out. I need to leave," Adrian said, trying to sit up again. The panic of being discovered was starting to bleed back into his consciousness. "If they find me here, if they find you here with me..." "Shh." She pushed him back down with surprising strength. "You can't walk yet. You're trembling like a leaf. My shift ends at 5 a.m. The security guards do their rounds on this floor at 4:45. You have 2 hours. Sleep. I'll wake you up before they come." "Why?" he asked again, the question gnawing at him. "I have nothing to give you. I can't pay you back." Elena looked at him, her dark eyes softening. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small foil-wrapped package. She unwrapped it to reveal 2 aspirin tablets. "You think everyone operates on a transaction, don't you?" she asked softly. "My dad used to say that we help people not because they are worthy, but because we are. Now take these." Adrian swallowed the pills dry. He felt a heaviness settling into his bones, a gravitational pull towards sleep that he couldn't resist. The closet, smelling of toner, ink, and Elena's faint vanilla shampoo, felt safer than his penthouse on Park Avenue. As his eyes fluttered shut, he felt Elena adjusting the wool cardigan around his shoulders, tucking him in as if he were a child. "Sleep, Alex," she whispered. "I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." For the first time in 20 years, Adrian Blackwood didn't check his phone. He didn't worry about the Asian markets opening. He didn't think about the board meeting scheduled for the morning. He simply let go. He fell asleep to the sound of Elena humming a soft, nameless melody, a lullaby for the broken billionaire hiding in the dark. The wake-up call wasn't a jarring alarm or the buzzing of a smartphone. It was a gentle hand on his shoulder, shaking him with urgent precision. "Alex, Alex, wake up." Adrian gasped, his eyes flying open. For a split second, he didn't know where he was. The smell of paper and dust filled his nose. Then, the face of Elena came into focus, hovering above him in the gray, pre-dawn light. She looked terrified. "What time is it?" Adrian croaked. His throat felt better, less like raw meat and more like bruised fruit. The fever had receded to a dull ache behind his eyes. 4:40, Elena whispered, her voice tight. "Security is coming up the north elevator. I just saw the lights on the panel. You have to go, now." Adrian sat up, his joints popping. He felt weak, his limbs heavy and uncoordinated, but his mind was sharp again. The fog had lifted enough for the reality of his situation to crash down on him. He was the CEO of Blackwood Enterprises, hiding in a supply closet like a fugitive, wearing a stained gray t-shirt and being smuggled out by a woman who made minimum wage. He stood up, swaying slightly. Elena's hand was instantly on his elbow, steadying him. "Can you walk?" she asked. "Yes." Adrian nodded, gritting his teeth. He looked at her. In the harsh light of the hallway creeping under the door, she looked exhausted. Dark circles bruised the skin under her eyes. She had stayed awake to watch over him. "Here," she said, shoving something into his hand. It was a small, crumpled $10 bill. Adrian stared at the money. "What is this?" "For a cab," she said quickly, peeking out the door to check the hallway. "Or coffee. Whatever. You look like you haven't eaten in days, Alex. Just take it." Adrian looked from the bill to her face. $10. That was probably an hour of her life. Maybe more. He wanted to refuse, to pull out his black titanium Amex card and laugh, but he realized his wallet was in his jacket, which was currently hanging in his private office 3 doors down, a room he couldn't enter without triggering sensors that would alert the very guards Elena was trying to avoid. He was penniless. "I can't take your money, Elena," he said, his voice low. "Don't be proud," she hissed, grabbing his hand and closing his fingers around the bill. Her skin was rough against his palm. "Pride doesn't keep you warm. Go down the, service stairs. They exit into the alley behind 6th Avenue. It's unlocked from the inside until 6 a.m. A heavy thud echoed from the far end of the hallway, the sound of heavy boots on marble. "Go!" She pushed him toward the back of the closet where a secondary door led to the service corridor. Adrian paused at the threshold. He looked back at her. She was already grabbing her mop, preparing to look busy, preparing to become invisible again. "I won't forget this," Adrian said intensely. "I promise you, Elena, I won't forget." She didn't look at him. She was staring at the floor, bracing herself for the guards. "Just go, Alex. Please." Adrian slipped into the shadows of the stairwell. Just as the heavy doors of the main corridor swung open, he heard the boom of a guard's voice. "Cleaner, ID check," before the heavy fire door clicked shut behind him, sealing him in the concrete silence of the stairwell. He began the descent, 42 flights of stairs. With every step down, the vertigo of his fever fought with a rising, burning anger. He was angry at the system he had built, angry at the fear he had seen in Elena's eyes, angry that the only person who had treated him like a human being in 20 years was someone his company valued less than the toner cartridges he had slept next to. By the time he stumbled out into the freezing alleyway, the sun was just beginning to bleed a pale, watery gray into the sky. The rain had stopped, leaving the city slick and shining. Adrian leaned against the brick wall, gasping for freezing air. He looked at the crumpled $10 bill in his hand. Alexander Hamilton stared back at him, worn and faded. He hailed a yellow cab on 6th Avenue. The driver, a Sikh man with a turban, looked at Adrian's disheveled appearance with suspicion until Adrian waved the $10 bill. "Where to, buddy?" the driver asked. "Upper East Side," Adrian said automatically, then stopped. He couldn't go home. Not like this. His doorman would call the police. His personal assistant would already be there, panicked. He needed a moment. He needed to think. "Actually," Adrian corrected himself, "just drive. Take me to a diner. Any diner that's open." 20 minutes later, Adrian Blackwood sat in a red vinyl booth at a Greasy Spoon on 2nd Avenue. He ordered black coffee and toast. The waitress, a woman in her 60s with hair the color of straw, poured the coffee without making eye contact. He wrapped his hands around the warm mug. He closed his eyes and saw Elena's face. He heard her voice. People who are loved don't need everything to be perfect. He reached into his pocket. The $10 bill was gone, used to pay the cab, but he found something else. When Elena had tucked the cardigan around him, something must have fallen from her pocket into his. He pulled it out. It was a small plastic ID card holder. Inside was a photo of a young girl, maybe 6 years old, wearing a hospital gown and smiling bravely, missing 2 front teeth. Tucked behind the photo was a folded piece of paper, an overdue notice from a pharmacy, metformin and chemotherapy copay, past due, $484.50. Patient, Maria Gomez, Elena's mother. Adrian stared at the paper. The sum was laughable to him. He made $484.50 every fraction of a second. But for Elena, this piece of paper was a monster. It was half her rent. He made $84.50 every 3 seconds of the fiscal year. But for Elena, this piece of paper was a monster. It was the reason she scrubbed floors at 3 a.m. It was the reason she looked so tired. And yet she had given him $10. Adrian Blackwood took a sip of the bitter, burnt coffee. It was terrible. It was the best thing he had ever tasted. He pulled a napkin from the dispenser and took a pen from the waitress's apron pocket as she walked by. "Hey," she protested. "I'll buy you a new box of pens," Adrian muttered. Already writing. He didn't write a memo. He didn't write a business plan. He began to write a list. Find Elena Gomez. Pay the pharmacy bill. Fire the security supervisor on the 42nd floor. Burn the Blackwood standard policy. He stopped. He looked at the ID photo of the little girl again. Then he looked at his own reflection in the dark window of the diner. He looked like a wreck, but for the first time in years, the eyes staring back at him didn't look dead. They looked awake. He stood up, leaving the coffee untouched. He didn't have money to pay for it. He walked to the counter. I need to make a call, he told the cashier. Collect. The cashier raised an eyebrow. Collect? Who does that anymore? Someone who just woke up, Adrian said. He dialed the number of his personal attorney, a man who slept with his phone under his pillow. Marcus? Adrian said when the line connected. It's Adrian. Yes, I'm alive. Shut up and listen. I need cash, I need a car, and I need you to find out everything there is to know about a woman named Elena Gomez. And Marcus, do not, I repeat, do not let human resources know I'm asking. He hung up the phone and looked out at the city waking up. The Empire was about to strike back, but this time, the Emperor wasn't fighting for profit. He was fighting for the girl with the mop. The fluorescent lights of Sal's 24-hour diner buzzed with the sound of a dying insect, a high-pitched drone that seemed to drill directly into Elena's temples. It was 6:30 p.m. She had finished her shift at Blackwood Tower at 5 a.m., slept for 3 fitful hours on a mattress that sagged in the middle like a hammock, and then started her waitress shift at noon. Her feet felt like they were encased in cement. Every step she took between the greasy kitchen and the scuffed linoleum of the dining area sent a spike of fire up her calves. Table 4 needs a refill, Elena, move it! Sal barked from behind the grill. He was a man made of sweat and stained aprons, whose management style involved shouting over the hiss of frying bacon. Coming, Sal, Elena replied, her voice flat. She grabbed the coffee pot, fighting the tremor in her hand. She walked to table 4. A man in a cheap suit was sitting there, tapping away on his phone. He didn't look up when she poured the coffee. He just waved a hand dismissively when she asked if he wanted cream. Elena retreated to the counter and leaned against it for a precious second of rest. Her hand went instinctively to her apron pocket, fingers searching for the reassuring crinkle of the pharmacy bill and the plastic photo holder. Her fingers met only empty fabric. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through her exhaustion. She checked the other pocket. Nothing but tips, mostly quarters and damp dollar bills. She checked her back pocket. Empty. The blood drained from her face. That paper wasn't just a bill. It was the prescription. Without it, the pharmacist wouldn't dispense the metformin. And the photo. It was the only copy she had of Maria smiling before the chemotherapy took her hair. No, 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 she whispered, patting her clothes frantically. Please, God, no. She must have dropped it. Where? In the supply closet? In the stairwell? If she dropped it in the Blackwood building, it was gone. The day crew cleaners would have swept it up and tossed it into the incinerator without a second glance. To them, it was trash. To her, it was her mother's life. Tears pricked her eyes, hot and stinging. She couldn't cry here. Sal would fire her. She took a deep breath, swallowing the lump in her throat that tasted like despair. The bell above the diner door jingled. Table 6, Elena, Sal shouted. Elena wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, grabbed a menu, and turned toward the door. Welcome to Sal's. Just sit anywhere you... The words died in her throat. Standing in the entryway, shaking rain off a black umbrella, was Alex. He looked different than the shivering, dying man she had left in the supply closet 14 hours ago. He was clean-shaven now. His hair was combed back, dark and thick. He was wearing a simple navy blue sweater and dark jeans that fit him perfectly. Too perfectly for someone who supposedly worked maintenance. But there was a weariness in his posture that matched hers. He scanned the room, his dark eyes moving with a predatory intelligence that seemed out of place in a diner that smelled of burnt toast. Then, his gaze landed on her. The intensity of it made Elena's breath hitch. He walked straight to table 6, her section, and sat down. Elena approached him. Slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs. She looked around nervously. Alex? She hissed, keeping her voice low. What are you doing here? How did you find me? Adrian looked up at her. Up close, without the fever glazing his eyes, he was devastatingly handsome. There was a gravity to him, a solidity that made the cheap vinyl booth seem suddenly expensive, just because he was sitting in it. I have resources, he said simply. His voice was deep, smooth, stripping away the rasp of the sickness. And I owed you $10. He placed a crisp $10 bill on the table. Then he placed another one, and another. Elena stared at the money. I don't want your money, Alex. You shouldn't be here. If you work maintenance, shouldn't you be asleep? I quit. Adrian lied smoothly. He picked up the plastic menu, grimacing slightly at the sticky surface. Toxic work environment. Management was terrible. Elena let out a short, involuntary laugh. You can say that again. Did you get out okay? The guards? I got out. He nodded. He looked at her, really looked at her, scanning her face with that same intensity she had felt in the closet. You look worse than I feel, Elena. Gee, thanks. She shifted her weight, the pain in her feet throbbing. I lost something. Something important. I think I left it at the tower. Adrian reached into the pocket of his jeans. He pulled out a small plastic ID holder. Elena gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. You found it. She reached for it, but Adrian didn't let go immediately. He held it on the table, his thumb brushing over the face of the smiling little girl. Maria, Adrian read the name on the back. Your daughter? My sister, Elena corrected him, her voice trembling with relief. She's sick. That paper inside, it's the prescription. I thought I lost it forever. Adrian slid the holder across the table. Their fingers brushed. A spark, static and sharp, jumped between them. Elena pulled her hand back as if burned, clutching the photo against her chest. Thank you, she whispered, tears welling up again. You have no idea. I think I do, Adrian said softly. He leaned back, crossing his arms. I went to the pharmacy, Elena, on 4th and Main, the one listed on the bill. Elena froze. You what? I wanted to pay you back for the soup, for saving my life, so I went to pay the bill. He paused, watching her reaction. But they told me it was already paid. Elena blinked, confused. Paid? That's impossible. I didn't pay it. I don't have the money until Friday. The pharmacist said a guardian angel fund covered it. Adrian lied. He was a good liar. It was a skill required for boardrooms. He had wired the money to the pharmacy anonymously 2 hours ago, threatening to buy the entire chain if they revealed the source. Apparently, sometimes the system works. Elena slumped against the booth, her legs finally giving out. She slid into the seat opposite him, ignoring Sal's glare from the kitchen. Paid, she breathed, a weight lifting off her shoulders so heavy she hadn't realized she was carrying it. She covered her face with her hands. Oh my God. Adrian watched her. He felt a strange sensation in his chest, a tightening that had nothing to do with cardiac arrest and everything to do with the woman crying silently over an $80 bill. He was worth billions. He could buy this city, but he had never felt as powerful as he did in this moment, watching relief wash over her. You're lucky, Alex, Elena said, wiping her eyes and looking at him with a dazzling, watery smile. You're my good luck charm. First I find you, and now this. Maybe, Adrian smiled, a small, genuine quirk of his lips. Or maybe the universe is just trying to balance the books. Hey, princess! A voice boomed from the table next to them. The man in the cheap suit at table 4 was waving his empty mug. I've been waiting 10 minutes for a refill. Are you working or flirting with the boyfriend? Elena flinched, the magic of the moment shattering. She scrambled to stand up. I'm sorry, sir. I'm coming right now. No, Adrian said. The word was quiet, but it carried the force of a gavel strike. Elena stopped. The man at table 4 stopped. Even Sal in the kitchen seemed to pause. Adrian stood up. He didn't look like a maintenance worker anymore. He stood with the towering posture of a man who owned skyscrapers. He turned to the man at table 4. She isn't deaf, Adrian said, his voice dropping an octave, ice cold. And she isn't a servant. She is a human being serving you coffee that costs 99 cents. You will wait until she is ready. The man at table 4 opened his mouth to argue, looked into Adrian's eyes, and snapped it shut. There was something dangerous in Adrian's gaze, the look of a wolf dealing with a stray dog. The man muttered something, threw $1 on the table, and hurried out the door. Elena stared at Adrian, wide-eyed. You shouldn't have done that, she whispered, though her heart was racing. Sal is going to kill me. Sal won't do anything, Adrian said, sitting back down calmly. Now I believe I ordered coffee, and I want to hear about this sister of yours. Elena looked at him. She knew he was hiding something. No maintenance worker spoke with that kind of diction. No maintenance worker terrified rude customers with a single look. But looking at him, sitting in the dirty booth, waiting for her to talk not because he wanted something but because he cared, she decided not to ask. Not yet. Okay. She smiled, grabbing the coffee pot. But the coffee here is terrible. Don't say I didn't warn you. I've had worse, Adrian said, thinking of the champagne at the gala he had fled. Trust me. Outside, the rain began to fall again, washing over the city streets. Inside, a billionaire and a janitor sat over stale coffee, building a bridge between two worlds that were never meant to touch. Friday arrived with the weight of a judge's gavel. The rain had cleared, leaving New York under a sky of piercing, relentless blue. But inside the service elevator of Blackwood Tower, the air was thick with dread. Elena smoothed the front of her uniform for the 10th time. Her reflection in the brushed metal doors looked pale, a ghost in synthetic blue. Earlier that morning, her supervisor, Mr. Henderson, a man who smiled only when firing someone, had intercepted her at the time clock. Penthouse, Henderson had barked, handing her a key card with a red stripe. Mr. Blackwood wants the South Suite detailed personally, immediately. But the South Suite is clean, Elena had stammered. I did it myself last night. Do not argue with the 42nd floor, Gomez. Just go. Now, as the elevator numbers climbed, 38, 39, 40, Elena felt nausea curl in her stomach. Had she left something behind? Had they found traces of the soup? Had Alex, the disgruntled maintenance worker, been caught and implicated her? She hadn't seen him since the diner 3 days ago. He had vanished into the city as mysteriously as he had appeared, leaving only the memory of his intense gaze and a paid pharmacy bill that felt too good to be true. The elevator chimed. 42. The doors slid open. The silence hit her first. It wasn't the empty silence of the night shift. It was the hushed, terrified silence of a kingdom where the king is present. Assistants in sharp suits whispered into headsets, walking briskly on the plush carpet. None of them looked at her. She was invisible again. Elena walked toward the heavy double doors of the CEO's office. Her hands shook as she swiped the key card. The light turned green. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was vast, an expanse of black marble and floor-to-ceiling glass that made one feel suspended in the sky. The sunlight was blinding, bouncing off the chrome accents. It felt sterile, cold, perfect. Mr. Henderson said you wanted the South Suite checked, Elena announced to the empty room, her voice trembling slightly. I didn't call Henderson. The voice came from the balcony. The glass door slid open, and a man stepped in from the wind. He was wearing a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than Elena's entire apartment building. His tie was silk, tied in a perfect Windsor knot. On his wrist sat a platinum watch that caught the sun. He looked powerful. He looked untouchable. He looked like a god of industry. But when he turned around, the eyes were the same. Elena dropped her cleaning bucket. It hit the expensive carpet with a dull thud, water sloshing over the rim. Alex, she whispered. The man walked toward her. His stride was different now, confident, owning the space. He stopped behind the massive black desk, resting his hands on the surface. Hello, Elena, he said. You. Elena took a step back, her mind reeling, trying to reconcile the image of the shivering man in the supply closet with the Titan standing before her. You're him. You're Adrian Blackwood. I am. You lied to me, she said, the shock quickly morphing into a hot flush of anger. In the closet, at the diner, you sat there drinking bad coffee, letting me think you were, what, unemployed, a failure, while you owned the building? I didn't lie about the important things, Adrian said, his voice steady, though his knuckles were white where he gripped the desk. I was sick, I was alone, and I was terrified. You were laughing at me, Elena accused, tears stinging. Her eyes. She felt foolish. The $10 she had given him, the soup, the advice. She had tried to save a man who could buy and sell her existence with a signature. It was a game to you. Undercover boss, right? See how the peasants live? It wasn't a game. Adrian's voice cracked, the veneer of the CEO slipping for a second to reveal the man beneath. He walked around the desk, closing the distance between them. Elena, look at me. Look at this office. Do you see any warmth here? Do you see any soup? Any kindness? He stopped a few feet from her. He looked tired again despite the expensive suit. For 20 years, people have looked at me and seen a checkbook. They see a title. They see leverage. Tuesday night, in that closet, you were the first person who looked at me and just saw a human being in pain. You didn't know who I was and you saved me anyway. That wasn't a game. That was the only real thing that has happened to me in a decade. Elena held his gaze. She saw the desperation there, the loneliness she had sensed in the diner. Why bring me here? She asked, her voice softer but still guarded. To fire me. Did I break protocol by feeding the CEO caldo de pollo in a supply closet? Adrian let out a short, breathy laugh. He reached into his jacket pocket, the silk lining contrasting with the rough wool she remembered, and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I made a list, he said. In the diner. He handed it to her. Elena unfolded it, her rough hands smoothing the expensive stationery. 1. Find Elena Gomez. 2. Pay the pharmacy bill. 3. Fire the security supervisor on the 42nd floor. 4. Burn the Blackwood Standard policy. Elena looked up, confused. Burn the standard? I fired Henderson this morning, Adrian said quietly, and I issued a new memo. The cleaning staff gets a 20% raise, effective immediately, and new gloves, the good kind, lined with cotton. He looked at her hands, and no one gets written up for imperfections anymore. We aren't robots. Elena looked at the paper, then back at him. You did this? I'm trying, Adrian said. I'm trying to be the man Alex wanted to be, but I can't do it alone. I sit in this glass box and I forget what it's like down there. I need someone who tells me the truth, someone who isn't afraid to tell me my coffee is terrible. He took a step closer. The scent of his cologne, sandalwood and rain, filled the air, replacing the smell of cleaning chemicals. I don't need a maid. Elena, I have plenty of those. I need a reality check. I want to offer you a position as quality control coordinator. You walk the floors. You tell me what's broken, what's unfair, and who is suffering. You report directly to me. He paused, looking deeply into her eyes. And a full scholarship. Nursing, business, art, whatever you want to study. I'll pay for it. I want to invest in you, Elena. Elena stared at him. It was a fairy tale offer. It was the answer to every prayer she had whispered over her mother's hospital bed. But she looked at his eyes and she saw something else. He wasn't just offering a job. He was offering a hand. And what happens? Elena asked, a challenge in her voice. When the liaison wants to have dinner with the CEO, is that against protocol? Adrian smiled. It was the smile from the diner, the one that made the corners of his eyes crinkle. I think, Adrian said, reaching out to gently take the cleaning bucket from her hand and setting it aside, that the CEO would be very open to that, as long as it's not at Sal's. My mom makes better food anyway, Elena murmured, her heart finally steadying, finding a rhythm that matched his. I'm counting on it, Adrian said. He reached out and took her hand. His palm was warm, his grip firm. He didn't care about the calluses. He didn't care about the uniform. For the first time, the glass walls of the 42nd floor didn't feel like a cage. They felt like a window to a future that was messy, imperfect, and absolutely beautiful. Elena squeezed his hand back. Okay, boss, she whispered. But first, you have to let me finish this floor. I don't leave a job half done. Adrian Blackwood, the man who commanded billions, laughed. He picked up the spray bottle from her cart. Then show me what to do, he said. I think I missed a spot in the conference room. And there, high above the city, the billionaire and the cleaner got to work. Not on the floor, but on fixing something much more broken. And much more valuable. Trust is the foundation of any relationship. Elena forgave Adrian for his secret, but not everyone would be so understanding. If you found out the person you were dating was secretly a billionaire testing you, would you feel betrayed or relieved? Let us know in the comments below. And if you believe that true love sees no status, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about unexpected romance.